Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Hey everybody, welcome to the first with Dr. Sandi. Today I'm speaking to Audrey D. Lloyd. Audrey has been achieving her first in warp drive. When the classical and technical high schools in Springfield, Massachusetts merged, they became Springfield Central High School. And guess who was the first senior class president? That's right, it was our girl Audrey. She was right on the spot. She was also the first to pledge the Exquisite Xi Nu chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority in Western Massachusetts. As an ex-corporate exec, she was the first in her family to take the entrepreneurial route as an independent consultant. That's because she's following in the footsteps of a family of first. Her parents were the first family members to migrate from Jamaica to England and then to the United States in the mid-70s. Audrey is now the proud author of Bold, Rein in Your Mind, Rein in Your Career. It's a book about mindset, finding your authentic self and stepping into your personal power. She found her power in being a change management and business transformation expert and an ICF-credentialed executive coach, speaker, inventor, futurist, and universal citizen. Let's welcome Audrey to the first. Hey everybody, today I'm talking to my good friend Audrey Lloyd. We're on the first with Dr. Sandi, and I get amazing people on the first. But today I'm really excited to talk to you, Audrey. We've known each other for a little bit, but tell the audience about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you. And it's my sincere pleasure to be here with you, Sandi. And yes, we've known each other for a while. And I absolutely love your segment on the first. Wow, let's see. Where do I start in terms of being the first? I think first I'll give a nod to my parents to say that they showed me a lot about being the first, and that, my parents left, particularly I'll speak of my dad, left Jamaica when he was 25 and went to the UK, lived there for a period of time, and then came to the United States. So I think that's, in my blood, right? Yeah. But in terms of being the first, with some of the things that I can think about, we talked about how proud I am of saying I was senior class president, of my high school, right?
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. That is a big deal. And it was a big deal because it was bringing together two high schools, a technical high school and a college prep high school. And there was a big divide. There was a little bit of a chasm between the people who didn't necessarily go on to college and those that had a classical high school that would. And so when they blended us and we became Central High School, really I based my campaign, and believe it or not, I still have the cue cards that I used when I was 14 to run for president. And when I went back and read it, it was really trying to bring two sections together. So I was the first in that, and very proud to be the first class president of Springfield Central High School. And I will say that going back and reading those cue cards, or even having known that I did that, says a lot about, for me, who I am as a person.
Yes.
And in terms of being the first, I went to journalism school, which, traditionally, especially in my family, many people pursued more of, my sister has her doctorate, for example, PhD in public health. So that's much more of a tangible thing when you kind of go into journalism. It's kind of like, what are you going to do with a journalism degree, So I think I was really the first to pursue my passion and what I was really, really great at and wanted to do. And really, the song that Synopsis said, I did it my way. I think I was the first to do it my way.
Good.
I'll stop there for a minute.
Yeah. No, so tell me a little bit about your career and, what you've done kind of a little bio synopsis.
Yeah, so my bio would be that, I grew up in communications. I was a traditionally trained communications person, but also a change manager. So I started in change management in 1997, even before change management was hot. I
Yeah.
worked for a lot of great companies, met you actually at American Express, one of them. Very proud to be a part of American Express's journey into customer relationship management and to help the organization bring that to life by applying change methodologies and tools. And then later went on to work for Wyeth Pharmaceutical, as their site communications director, and then eventually got very global, worked for American Standard companies during a time where the company was separating over a period of 18 months. And so that really took me around the world. And I absolutely loved doing both strategic communications and doing leadership communications. And I always say that I've always been in the business of transformation. So I took one more click. I'm an executive coach now. So I
Yay. To all the coaches out there.
to all the coaches out there. So I delve into helping individuals change, but this is not new for me because more in the past, I was more focused on helping companies change. So I'm just getting a little bit more personal now in doing the coaching.
And they intertwine. People's personal always gets intertwined with the business. And especially business owners, individual business owners, you can't really separate the two a lot. And I know people talk about working from home and integrated, to me, it's all integrated. There's no such thing as you're going to separate your family because if, let's say you have to do a business travel, it's going to impact your family.
Right.
Negatively or positively. Maybe you can take the kids with you or your family and make a little vacation, but half the time you're going to be missing somebody's birthday or somebody's something, right? You're not going to be there. So I love coaching, but I really think it's a very integrated thing with your business and personal life. So let's talk about your sorority.
Mhm.
You're the first. I'm reading your little notes here. The Exquisite Z new Exquisite. Tell me why did you pledge? I know I chose not to, but why did you pledge and what does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. So I, first of all, went to the University of Massachusetts, which is in the 5 college area. So there's Smith, there's Hampshire College, there's Amherst College. I mean, all great institutions that are over there. And I pledged because I really love the idea of particular Alpha Kappa Alpha, what it means to be servant, right? And I think Alpha Kappa Alpha has a lot to do with serving the community
Leadership.
of
Yes.
leadership, in addition to the fact that, oh my goodness, I met so many stellar women at Amherst College, at UMass, that were just women that I thought, wow, just to be in the same room with them. Now, why I pledged was because of that. But I think sometimes, unfortunately, when people pledge sororities, they get lost in the sorority. I never got lost in the sorority. I love AKA, but I realized that I am the attribute to AKA. AKA doesn't make me.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I chose not to pledge because I didn't like, I guess when I was back in 78, 79, somewhere around there when I started college, there was all this hazing and all this stuff going on. It wasn't like now where people frown on that, right? It's almost a rite of passage to do these things. And every time I went, when I don't know what you call it, they have the open house
Yeah.
where you go in, they were always asking some ridiculous things. And I just wasn't about that.
Mhm.
To stand out in the sun. I remember one day they had girls just standing out in this like 90, 100-degree weather. And I'm like, what purpose does this serve? Right? And so I guess I didn't get past all of that upfront kind of thing because I just didn't, it wasn't me. And I never really felt the need to belong to a group per se. Uh, as I'm older, yes, I understand the value of networking, and I didn't see it as networking back then, and probably I should have, but I just didn't see it. So I actually have a lot of people think I'm in AKA, I'm in Delta, I'm in like all these sororities because I just embraced all of them. My friends were in all of them and I showed up. They would invite me to events. And so some people's like, oh, how come you're wearing red today? I thought you were, the purple girl. Or I'm like, I'm
Right.
all those girls.
Right. But I will say, I love what you just said, Sandy, but I will say for the women that I met as part of this I Knew chapter, my experience with pledging really is they focused a lot on character building, and yes, they do, I won't give away the secrets, but I think in order to build character, also you have to recognize some of the flaws, right? And so I learned a tremendous about things about myself from pledging. And like I said, the women that I had that pledged me were stellar. You know what I mean? They were really people who you look up to. And I don't get involved as much as I would like to. I do actually want to get more involved in the AKA in terms of the civic and also the community
They're a
service.
great organization. I can't.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I love them and I love I love all the sororities, like the people that I've met, and a lot of my friends are in different sororities. And so, like I said, I go to all their events, I support their events. If they're having, any fundraising, I'm there. So yeah, I just couldn't get past all the upfront stuff because that was just so not me. I wish they had more just apply, we'll interview you, and you're done.
right.
The job. Kind
Not
of.
that easy though, that's for sure. At least not back in the days when I pledged. Yeah.
But no, that is great that you did that and that you should get more involved.
I
You should
should.
put it on your vision board. Get more
I,
involved with the AKAs
absolutely.
because I can't say enough about them. So, what are some of the joys of being first? And let's talk specifically about you wrote a book.
Yeah.
You wrote a book called Bold. So, tell us how do you define bold, and what are just some of the joys of writing that book?
Yeah, so I'll take the latter first. I think some of the joys of writing that book, I'm a mom, right? And so I think it's setting an example for your children that when you set your mind to something that you actually can do it and can make a difference. And I will say that writing that book was hard. It was really hard.
It
And
is.
they saw me go through, you're an author yourself, that they saw me go through the journey. And there were times I have to say, when I first started out writing it, and even though I had an editor and I had a coach, I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do this. I kind of had the doubts, but then, I think digging deep and really focusing, how can I make a difference? I think that was the shift that I had to make, that it wasn't about me, but what is it that's in me that I have to give to the world that I wish my younger self would have had, And I think also having my children see and getting them involved. They would ask me the best questions. And I'd be like, that's a great question. I got to answer that in here. And they'd hear my voice app, because I have where I call her Sarah, but she would read back what I wrote and my kids would be like, yes. Or they'd be like, we're confused. What do you mean by that? So they were sort of, very good on the feedback, but I think also
Nice.
it demystifies a lot that it's not hard anymore because now it's done,
It's
right?
a process. It becomes a process, and as long as you follow the process, it doesn't seem as hard.
And to
But
trust the
yeah,
process.
you will get there. And it's a timing thing too, because you can write a book in a couple of months. I've known people who wrote a book in, 2 or 3 months. Actually, our first book we wrote in 3 months.
Wow.
We had the summer, well, we had the summer off. It was 2008. Remember what happened to financial crisis?
Right.
And then we were fine in 2008 because we had all these contracts. But then when 2009 came and these contracts ran out and no one was signing up, like the phone wasn't even ringing, Peggy and I sat down and said, how we had to let people go and, do all the things business owners had to do. But we've talked about writing the book for a long time and never got to it. So sometimes when we want to do this, we talk about it, but we don't put pen to paper right? Or we don't start the process of outlining and what you want to do. Well, came 2009, phone wasn't ringing. We knew even if we got a project, it might not start for a while. So we said, let's take this summer. Remember that book? Remember that book we wanted to talk about? Let's just get it out. It's in us. All the things we need are already inside of us. We just have to put it on paper and then polish it and give it to an editor to do their thing. From start to finish, I think we started it at the end of May, and by the end of August, this thing was like all done. Second, third draft, like it was done. We
Wow.
just spitting it out in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I did it that way. So it can, if you have the time, right? But we don't always have the time.
Well, I mean, before I answer your second question, you definitely have to be intentional. You know what I mean? And for me, because of the pandemic, I said during that period of time, I wanted to plant seeds. That was my theme. I was like, I want to plant seeds. This is going to be the phase of my life that I'm in. And so I thought, you know what? I always said, kind of in jest, I'm going to write a book one day, right? And I loved your book, right? And I was so inspired, also by you. And I said, you know what? This would be a good seed to plant, because it's going to come to fruition. I have more ideas for it. But in terms of your question around bold, I'm glad you asked, because the title, many people might think bold is something where you're loud or you're super colorful. And in the book, I talk about the bold can be for some people, but your bold and my bold it's not going to be the same. And it's not a personality thing. So you can be an introvert or an extrovert and still be bold. But to me, bold is really being strategic, having agency over your life, having intention about what it is that you want to do, and realizing, I always say this, you are already great. There's some opportunities for you to learn and grow, to continuously improve and evolve, but start with your magic, what makes you wonderful. And that is bold.
I love that. I love that for a couple of reasons. And I'll take it even a step further. A lot of people are strategic, but you have to take action at some point, right? And I've seen people with families who stop them from being bold. They're bold in their hearts. They have all the things that it takes. They want to do it. But then let's say you have a spouse that is like, that is nonsense. I don't want you to do that. And so against it. You have to really dig deep to say which one, now you have to balance, right? Which one is more important to me? For me to go do this thing that is really inside of me, and to go against my family, or to suppress it and either never get it out. I know a lot of people, Audrey, who are bold in a lot of areas of their lives. But when it comes to self and doing something for themselves or something that they want, they can't take that next step because of, my family is not going to speak to me. My husband might leave me if I do that. And so they never get fully bold enough to overcome and to take this step, even to write a book. I've talked to people where they said, I have a book inside of me, but if I ever write that book, none of my family will speak to me.
Well, bold, I mean, if I had to say, what does the word, what does BOLD stand for? I would definitely say it means brave, original, loving, and determined. And so you do have to be brave. You do have to step out and to really say, who am I? Who am I? Because I own myself. I'm an individual unit. I'm not my mom and dad. I'm not my children. I have my own desires. And I actually think, Sandi, that when we have something inside of us, it's a little bit like that beach ball when you're at the beach and you try to keep the ball between your leg under the water. It's going to pop up. And either it pops up where you show yourself as you really are authentically, or you become embittered. You get mad because
Yeah.
you had it in yourself and you didn't go after it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've seen those angry people, and you don't know why they're angry. Some of them don't even know, they don't even dig deep to explore why they're angry. But it's because they feel like the world's been against them. And it's not even so much the world, it's that bold thing. They've not been bold enough to take the steps to do what is necessary or what is needed to accomplish their goal, right? So, yeah, I love the idea of being brave because a lot of people just are not brave enough.
They're not brave enough. And I understand that there are forces that keep us from being brave enough. And then I think, in companies, I mean, this book is for individuals, but I think eventually I see legs for companies, because I think what happens is that many companies think it's their responsibility to give individuals power or purpose or capacity or capability. And it's up to you, the individual. You have that inside of you. And so you can't hide, be it behind, to your point, your children or your spouse or the company or society. I think, what I talk about in the book is that on the other side of accountability is power. It's power. Is to say, you know what, I understand because I'm steeped in reality that this might be the case. The day might be raining, but I can take accountability to say, you know what, despite that, I'm still going to go out and do what I have to do. I'm not going to stay home just because it's raining, because you're reality based, but you're taking accountability for your actions.
Yeah, and you mentioned corporate, and in corporate, sometimes when you're brave,
Mm,
you get typecast.
yes,
I know about that very
I
well.
do too, because we're bold.
And, and in that case, they also label you when you're in corporate. You pick up this label that you carry around with you. And, we talk about unconscious bias and bias a lot, but people label you based on their biases, right? If you speak up in a meeting, you're loud. If you're bold enough to speak up in a meeting, you're loud. And you get this stamp like, loud girl. And well, yes, I am loud. I was loud in corporate. I'm loud now. If I see something or if I have a question, I will ask it. I'm curious. I love to learn. And the way I learn is by asking questions, right? So if I'm in a meeting and I don't understand something that you said, I'm not trying to show you up. See, the outside perspective is you're trying to show me up by asking me all these questions. I'm in the middle of my presentation and you're asking all these questions. That's how it was in corporate, right? Just
Absolutely.
stay
Yeah, I'm
quiet,
sorry to
little
cut in.
girl.
Mhm.
Yeah, stay quiet, little girl or little black girl, and just leave me and let me do my thing. And so I was never that person. I was never the quiet person. I didn't care about labels, just like I didn't care about pledging and sort of, I never cared about labels. I never really cared what they thought about me because I had my reasons for being there,
Love it.
being in a corporation. I was there to learn. I always knew that I would have my own business one day, and corporate would teach me all the things, good and bad,
Mhm.
that I needed to learn so I could run my company the way that I wanted to.
Yes. And Dr. Sandi Webster, you are bold. You have been bold, right? And
I have, since a child, since a
you
child.
were, since you were a child. And in fact, in the book, I talk about the underbelly of bold. And, there is an underbelly. There is a price you will pay when you do recognize that you have personal power, that you have gifts and capabilities, and that you are great. You have something to offer. But I would say that what you also describe as a person who wants to contribute, you have something to say, is you're alive and engaged, right? And you know that you
Yes.
matter. You can actually make a difference, right? And I think that many companies talk about you belong, and I really wish that they would stop saying people belong, because it's up for the individual to know that they belong. My
Yes.
sister and I have this joke that we say, we're going to get a t-shirt, and I actually should get it. And on the front, it's going to say, I belong. And on the back, it's going to say, remember? Do you remember that you told me that I belong?
Yes.
It's a little
Yes.
bit in jest, but it's to
Yes.
say that you belong when you have purpose, and you know, like you said, you had something to do. You knew you always wanted to do this, right? You had the agency to do this. And so that is bold. And so when you do that, there are going to be people that wonder, well, she must think that she's too much, or who does she think she is? And that many times will keep us from being bold, because we don't want to be the biggest nail, the highest nail, right? We
Yes.
don't want to be pounded down. And
Correct.
so what do? We keep quiet. But like, again, like the beach ball, it's going to pop up because you're going to have that feeling of something's missing, or that you're not doing enough. You're not working up to your full potential. You know what that feels like when you're in
Yes.
that position.
Yes. And I remembered my grandmother. My grandmother taught me a lot about being bold, and so did my mom. But I remember one of her sayings, it was, people, let me get the right phraseology. You know how you've impacted this earth the day you die, right?
Mm.
And even more so, the measure of a person is their funeral. Like when they leave this earth, what kind of impact did you leave on the people? And you should live your life the way that you want to be remembered, right? And this is a little old lady who only went to sixth grade. And she always said that. And so we used to laugh at her when we were little about going to funerals. She would go to funerals all the time. And we're like, that's your favorite pastime, is going to funerals. But as I got older, and particularly this past week, one of our, I don't know if you remembered Kevin Doherty from American Express. He passed away, and I had to go to his funeral, or at least the service that they had for him. And it was one of those things, like my grandmother said, it's the measure of the person, right, at their funeral. If people are willing to show up for you and to honor you when you're no longer here, and can the things they have to say about you, and you impacted their lives enough that they show up for your last time on earth, says a lot about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I heard that he passed away, I'm like, I have to go to his funeral. This is, we were going to go to Virginia, and I'm like, we're not going because I have to go to his funeral. That guy was such a nice guy.
Mm.
And it was like a little Amex reunion.
Oh,
Because,
that must have been great.
yeah, the people, people came in from all over
Wow.
just to honor him and just to be there. I mean, we didn't even have time to speak about him. They had a separate little service for that, but I couldn't go to that. But I was sitting there thinking about how bold Kevin was in a lot of things that were frowned on at the time. He quit his corporate job, well paying corporate job, to be a stay at home dad.
Oh my goodness. That's great.
This is, I think he left in around 2000, and probably right at 9/11 time. He decided, I'm going to stay home because I want to be an impact on my kids. And I want to raise them the way that I can't do if I'm in corporate working till 10 o'clock at night, right?
Right.
And so his wife also worked for Amex, and she was a senior level person. And he decided, or they decided, she would continue to work, and he would stay home with the kids. And
Wow.
we
Mhm.
we used to, catch up with him all the time. He was the team coach for his boys and his daughter. He was such a big neighborhood person. They lived in Battery Park. We would see Kevin all the time around. Oh, I'm going to a condo meeting. Oh, I'm going to a neighborhood. We need a better park. We needed this. And it never fazed him that he left corporate, or some people would say, what is he doing? He's letting his wife take care of him or something. No, this guy was on his own trajectory. He's living his life his way, and he was happy.
I think your grandmother has a point. I mean, Stephen Covey says, what does he say? Live with the end in mind. I believe that's his
Yeah,
quote.
yeah.
But I think that's what your grandmother is saying. And I actually do say that in the book as well, that it is, when you think about it all, if you could, go back to the beginning, go back to the start, right? On your last day, that you really would say, oh my goodness, if I could do this again, I really would have focused on the things I really wanted to do. So here is the moment where you're watching right now, you're listening to what we have to say. We can do that at any time. We can say, I want to live that life that when it is the end, it's a life that is purposeful, intentional,
Well lived.
life that's well lived.
A life well lived. And
Right.
there, I had another friend who passed away this week, and it really hit me hard. He had a stroke, and within 5 hours of my hearing he had a stroke, I got the news that he passed away. And those two people, when the salt of the earth, these are people who would have your back no matter what. I don't know, this week just really hit me that hard. And those two people, I would say, lived their lives with boldness.
Yes.
You know, the second guy, Raul, who's in my Toastmasters group, people cried. People just broke out in tears and I sat and had to figure out, how do I tell these people that he's gone? We didn't even have time to tell him he had a stroke. And people called me a liar. You're lying. Raul's not dead. You're lying. Let me call his wife. Let me call his house. What are you calling to tell me? This is how upset people were. And again, this is someone who left such an impact on your life. You can't believe that they're now gone or is no longer there to continue that impact. So, yeah, being bold. I love your title more and more. Being bold really has so many different meanings to that.
Absolutely. And it really, the meaning I hope that people take away from it, and I think this is a good segue to making this point, that our lives are epic. It's a big deal. Why do we pretend like it's not? We are a big deal.
Because some people have told us it's not, right? And if you don't have the wherewithal and the mindset to understand that it's about you, I can't listen to everything other people tell me, and I can't have other people's stories impact my life like it was me that it happened to. So parents tell us things. Have you ever heard a parent tell their kid, like, you ain't shit?
Mm.
You ain't nothing. You ain't never gonna be nothing. You come from nothing. You ain't never gonna. Those kind of recitations that happens to you as a child. This is why some people don't have the courage to
Yeah.
step out, because it's so inculcated in them that it
Mhm.
becomes a part of their psyche.
It does. And it also, when I coach people, what I see is two things. I think most of the things that cripple us, I talk a lot about the things that stand in the way of our bold, because a lot do. But most of the things that cripple us go back to childhood. Sure, it does, in terms of how we were raised and messages that play in our head. And I think what happens is many times those feelings that we had or we were left to feel get triggered by different things that happen.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you do see very capable people that are super, super smart that don't step up or have leadership roles that they can't quite perform in because they're waiting to be told, or they're waiting for permission, or they're waiting for the shoe to drop. Someone's going to find out that I can't do this job, or maybe I can't do this job, or maybe I shouldn't even ask for more money. I should be grateful that I have this
Right.
job.
Right. I hear that a lot. I
Yeah.
hear that a lot. I just told someone you need to raise your prices. You're undervaluing yourself. And she's like, oh my God, no, all my clients are going to leave. And I'm like, you need to raise your prices. You're not at market rate. Even if you're not above rate, just go to market rate. Charge people what they will value you. And
Right.
so she thought about it. She actually was bold enough to take the
Mhm.
step to raise her prices. And I got this email. I feel so stupid. I raised my prices and not one of my clients said anything. They just paid my my bill.
Of course.
And I said, do you know what that means? You are not charging enough, and they knew it.
They knew it, but you said something earlier about mindset. And I think all of this comes back to mindset. And mindset is quite a lot, has to do with how you think about yourself, how you value yourself, what's important to you, what role do you think that you can play. And so I think that if a person doesn't have a mindset that doesn't understand themselves, they're going to also undervalue themselves. And if you don't value you, who's going to value you?
Big question. So, what are some of the joys or some of the things you really love about being first, especially with your book?
Well, like I said, I love the fact that you get to demystify it. It's no longer hard because you know someone who's done it. And I think there's real pride and a sense of ownership and originality because you didn't have anyone who did it before you, right? You did it. You paved the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think, for me also, for my dad, so, my dad is very special to me, that I called him quite a bit when I was writing my book just to consult with him. And I write about a lot about my parents in the book, but just having the look on his face or the smile, or, if I'm on a podcast or whatever, and he's there listening in. He has an iPhone, by the way. He's 88. He just got an iPhone. But he does sometimes, my sister will call him and he'll listen through the phone and he'll say, oh, you said it right, or you hit every note, or that was really great. I love that. I think that knowing that, I would say that the best gift I think anyone could give to their parents is that when your parents invest in you, that they're able to see come to
Yes.
flourishing. And I think my parents really silently, because they weren't people that were preachers, they didn't say a lot. They kind of just did the movement. They just behaved in such a way that I absorbed that. And to give them honor by saying, you know what, you poured all of this into me, and I hope you see how much I appreciate it and what I've done with it. I think that's the
Yes.
biggest pride that comes from being first.
So, do you have a negative side of being first?
I wonder what the heck why didn't I do it earlier? What's the problem?
Well, we talk about what the problem is, right? Life gets in the way sometimes.
Life gets in the way. We get in the way. We
We
make
get in
things
the way.
bigger in our head than they really are sometimes.
Yeah. I now have an almost impossible bucket list
Mm.
because of from COVID. I had so many friends who passed away during COVID, right? And some still are. And every time I think of that person, I'm like, I need to do more. I have so much that I want to do. If I don't start doing it now, like we never know when we're dying, right? We never know when we'll leave this earth. Raul certainly didn't plan on getting a stroke and being gone in, a couple of hours. So that's part of my thing. I just have so much now on my plate.
I hear the urgency, Sandy, and that's great. We should all have an urgency to live.
When we reach a certain point in life, we
Yes.
must realize that we're on the other side of getting things done. You know, even if I live to be, I'm 60 years old.
Oh my goodness.
I
Really?
If I live to be 120, let's say you double my life, that's a lot that I did in 60 years, but there's also a lot I didn't do. Even more than what I did is what I didn't do in those 60 years, right? So if I'm blessed to have even 20 or 30 more, how many of these things can I get done in, in the 20 or 30 that it took me 60 of learning and executing to get done in the next 20 years? I love to travel. How many places can I go in the next 20 years? Now you start considering money, you start considering COVID, some countries are not opened up, all of these other things. And you have to say, okay, I might not get to all of these. Now you
Prioritize,
start,
right?
but
Mm-hmm.
now you start selecting if I have one to go to next year, which one? Let's start there. And then the year after. So you start rank ordering,
Right.
ones that are more important to you because by the time, and then you get new ones that pop up every day.
Right. That's a good problem to have though, right?
It is, but and it could be a small thing. It could be a small thing. I saw this kid roller skating the other day, and I'm like, I don't know how to roller skate. But am I going to do it at 60? Maybe not. These bones don't heal,
Yeah.
don't heal as fast as that little kid out there, So then you start selecting, but you realize there are just some things you're not going to get to, or it's not prudent for you to get to them at this point in life, right? But yeah, um, you acquire the knowledge and you share the knowledge. How are you sharing the knowledge that you've gotten now from being the first in all these things?
Well, I think part of that is one, writing the book. Like I said, I wish that this book was a book I had when I was starting out. I think, I would have accelerated my path that much quicker. But at the same time, I feel like every lesson is for a reason. And we learn at the pace that we're supposed to learn at. But also, the fact that I coach people, I get to, even in coaching with proactive coaching, I don't tell my clients what to do. I mean, sometimes I do have consulting coaching where they ask me my opinion and I can share my wisdom.
Mhm.
Certainly, there are times where I give people during a coactive coaching conversation an observation. And that observation comes from the wisdom. And like they say, Sandy, you can see deeply. I see you when I was you. I can see what is in you if I have gone that path before,
Right,
right?
right.
And
Yes.
able to ask the question because it's, again, to tell you what to do is easy, but to ask you the enlightening question, the illuminating question where you're able to think through and make a decision, I think is a gift. Because I always wish that before I did something that was maybe not wise, that someone would say to me, might you think about that a little bit more? Or what if, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I try to pass on to my clients or to my children or to my friends, is to really, and to be honest, to be bold also, right? To say, this is what I have experienced. I always say, that if I can not necessarily learn the hard lesson, but take the best practice, take the tip that somebody's passed on,
Right.
I think that's
Right.
always a good thing.
Yeah, and I've taken a lot of tips. This is why, well, my new business that I started was to help women form an advisory board, right? And because I had people who gave me such great advice on my own board that now I want to give it back to others because people invested their time. I wasn't paying these people. They invested years of
Wow.
their time in helping me and making sure that I made the right decisions based on their experience of what went on. And now I'm trying to do that with others. And I think every woman should have an advisory board, whether it's, made up of friends and their personal advisory boards, right? This was the other thing I was talking to someone in corporate about. You can have a personal advisory board, and mentors in corporate, they teach us to have mentors. Well, I had a mentor. I had a couple of mentors. But when I go to mentor number one, they tell me one thing. Then I go to mentor number two, they tell me a different thing or a different aspect of that, right? Or their own opinion. But it's a little different when you get them all in a room together and they can bounce the ideas off each other. Because when I come to you and you say that, go back, I'm like, oh man, is that right? And I go to someone else, they give me a totally opposite. Now you're caught in this. Which one should I do? Does this one? When they sit in a room together and I can say, you know, Audrey, that's a great idea. But let me tell you what I experienced with that. Let me tell you a downside that I experienced to that that might happen to her. And all of a sudden, now you're hearing a different input into your ideas. And you can go, gee, I never thought about that, right?
Right.
And so when you have them all in a room, it's so much more powerful than having individual mentors. And I think even in corporate, you can form your own board. You can form your own accountability group
I
of,
I love this. I love this idea, and I'm glad that you're explaining it more because I think I understood it, but I understand it more from what you're saying now. Because I think you're right. I mean, you can ask three people what they think and triangulate to kind of get the mean between the three. But I think being able to tap into the wisdom, pearls of wisdom that individuals have, and hearing your feedback and hearing them share and elevate is really a gift that we need to do more. We
uh,
need to do more.
I,
Yes.
I tell
Especially as
you,
women.
especially women,
Yeah.
especially women. And it's so powerful because there's so many women business owners today, and a lot of them feel like, oh, I'm in it by myself. You're not. There are tons of people who did it before you. That is not a first. It might be a first for you and the first in your family, but people have been having businesses for generations, thousands and thousands of years. Why not tap into that knowledge when I do my first? I'll have all that wisdom with me.
Yeah, I think as women and as also as people of color, it's always great to have multiple points of input and to have the energy of other people and just to be able to have a sounding board. Because I mean, we live in such an insular world where we kind of live in our heads, right? With our phones, and we read other people's story, maybe on LinkedIn, but we don't get that human connection and that person to say, let me tell you about the time when this happened. This is what I did. Or just to have that shortcut to
Yes.
get you on your way.
But you still have to make the final decision, right?
Of course.
It's still your decision. You could choose to say, okay, I hear all of you, but there's this thing inside of me that says I still need to try it. You still have that option, but you're doing it knowing what all the options were, and you can still go off and do your own thing. And you could be right. I've heard people say, everybody told me this business wouldn't work, but I knew that it would. And despite what they said, I went ahead and did it, right? But you do it in a more informative way.
It's an informative way, and it's amazing to think that when we work for companies, I mean, think about this, Sandy, we spend hours, weeks, months, years developing the company strategy and executing the company strategy. But when it's time for us to have a personal strategy for our business or for ourselves, we just don't take the time. And to be strategic, to be thoughtful, to have a collective body, to go through your options, to plan it out. There's real power in that because it builds momentum then also, don't you find?
And I think that's what a vision board does for me. I've done a vision board for I don't know how many years. I keep like right over there so I can turn around, I look at it, I pass it all the time. And that is my vision board. It's my goal setting for the year. It's my how I'm going to move forward to the next thing. Because if I said I have 20 or 1,000 things I want to do by the time I leave this earth, what am I doing first, and what are the steps to getting it right? And so my vision board just takes me next year. These are the things I want to get done for next year. And if I don't get them, maybe it's just a step towards 5 years from now, right? If I decide to go to school for a doctorate, I know I'm not going to finish next year, but I have to put an application somewhere.
Yeah.
I have to do research on schools. I have to, so if I start putting those little things on my vision board, and so that next year, okay, I've now applied to 5 schools or 10 or whatever. The following year, it'll still be on my vision board, but with a little different twist, right? By the end of this year, I will apply to my top 3. By the end of this year or by the end of next year, I should be in one of those schools. Maybe I don't have the money to get it. Next year, okay, now I know which school I want to go to. Next year, I'm going to look for grants or foundations that can help me. But you have to take these baby
You
steps
do. You do.
along the way.
And it puts you in action. And in fact, in the book, I have a chapter on visualization because I think that we don't spend enough time thinking about the future, envisioning the future. And I'm not talking about daydreaming. Daydreaming is not the same as what you're saying, visualization.
Yes.
In fact, I talk in the book about, Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is a great example of vision. I don't know if most people know the
Yes.
stories about him,
Yes.
but there's a portion in the book where Ken, I forgot his last name, but he's an author. I lifted it from something that he wrote an article, but he was talking about how he met him, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in the 70s, and he could barely speak English. He couldn't even speak English. And they asked him, well, what are you going to do in America? And Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about he's going to be the biggest movie star. He said, and I think I'm going to one day run for politics. And everyone laughed. They spit their food out. And then to see that he's done this, but Arnold Schwarzenegger credits it to visualization. He's always seen himself before he was the great movie star. He saw himself as the movie star.
Yes.
He believed that he could do it.
Ken Blanchard.
Yes, Ken Blanchard. Thank you very much. I should know the name. And I was just about to say it. The B rolled off my tongue. But so you read the same article.
Yes.
But it's hysterical. When I read it, I almost tears were coming out of my eyes. The way he wrote it was just so accurate. And the fact that they laughed at Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes. Made it even sweeter for Arnold.
Made it even sweeter.
And now, he did his thing. He became governor. And now he speaks out. He's just, Arnold, I can be myself because I've done all my things and I don't have to agree with anyone with a party line or not. Now I can speak out and be myself.
What a life.
I know. And he's made mistakes in his life and he's owned up to them. And, that's just part of what you do. You own up to it and move forward.
And it doesn't take away from you. You can turn it into a gift for sure, right? It's an opportunity to learn and to get better.
So now that you've been, bold yourself.
Yes.
How can you be bolder or more bold? What are your next? What are you doing next?
I love your question. I love it. So, let me go back to say one more thing, because someone asked me the same question, but hers was not a question. Hers was a statement. And she was like, well, you wrote the book, but are you being bold yourself? Kind of questioning whether or not I was bold. And I was like, shh, bold is not about being loud. Bold is about taking steps. It's strategic. It's having a long game in terms of what it is that you want to do, investing in yourself, continuing to learn and grow. So I said earlier, I don't know if you heard me speak it to the universe, that I said, yes, I use bold right now in my coaching for individuals, but I eventually want to bring this to companies. Imagine if companies could enable individuals to be bold. Imagine having thousands of people that know what their capability really, what lies in them, to be empowered, to have agency. Can you imagine what can happen?
Yes.
If a company's able to do that versus feeling as if you have to tell people what to do or anchor them up. Let them stand up on their own 2 feet, see them for what they are. You and I have talked in the past about middle managers, really trying to really light the fuse under the middle managers, because that's what the magic is.
Yes.
But I really would love to have a home to be able to, really excite that level of leadership for them to really lean into their individual self, as opposed to just being that box, being that rung of middle manager, but really for them to see what it is that they can achieve when they really see themselves as strong individuals.
When you're a middle manager, the next level of management is being handpicked from the middle managers, right?
Right.
And sometimes you don't even think about it. So some people have stayed middle managers their entire lives because they're comfortable. They're making a great salary. I mean, I got kind of caught up in that at one point. Like, I'm making a lot of money. Why do I need to go do things? But inside of me, I always knew that was not what I wanted for the rest of my life. It served a purpose. It certainly gave me a good living, and I didn't have to worry. But I was always on the other side, ready to do something else. I got bored very easily, even at Amex. I would change groups like it's nothing. I'm just bored. I love new things. I love new shiny objects.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I'm the same way.
You're doing a new product, a new, what was that? A new this? Yes, yes.
Yes, I am the same way, but I think it's just what you're talking about, is to really, for me, what I envision is to help companies really develop that high road strategy, the high road strategy of saying, we have invested in these people. Let us take them, or let them allow them to get to the level that they can get to. You know what I mean? In terms of pigeonhole, because I think companies put people in boxes and they stay that way. So even for myself, I feel like when I was an FTE, I was in corporate, I had a job of, strategic global communications person, change leader, consultant in a corporate structure. But I have so much more in myself. I have a US patent. I have a book. I coach. I consult.
You can talk about your patent.
Yeah, I do. I love creating things.
Let's talk now and tell us about your patent. And
I forgot to put that on my list of first.
yes.
I'm humble. So yeah, I have a US patent for a novel baby blanket that is really focused on safety, that interfaces with the seat that the child is going to sit in, but without attaching to the seat. Because I have twins, and how I came up with it is I remember being at the Short Hill Mall in New Jersey, and I was freezing and my kids were freezing, and I was trying to get them in and out of their coats to put them in the car seat, and I actually had to abandon it. It was too cold. I couldn't. And then I was like, goodness, I wish I could have a way where my kids would already have their coats on them, because it's dangerous when the kid is in the car seat with the coat, because it prevents the car seat from really fastening, and in the event of an emergency, it's just unsafe. And so that really was the inspiration, to create the patent. Yeah.
And what have you done with it?
Well, that's another project in the future. I mean, eventually, maybe. I mean, I've had people approach me, inquiry to buy the patent, that's one of the pots, as my mom would say, that's kind of like on the back burner. And I think for me, it was just having the idea, and I could have talked up my idea to someone and have them do it. And I said, you know what, even though it took me 7 years and it was an investment of money and time, I also just wanted to have the pride to say, I did it. I have a US patent. I can do whatever I want with my patent. And hopefully one day my product will be in Best Buy, Buy Buy Babies, right? For moms to have access to. Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you up because I have ideas. That's some of my, bucket list items is the product.
Yeah.
And I have this thing turning in my head.
Ooh,
And yes, I need to get it out of my head and get a patent for this thing.
Yeah. And I learned so much. I learned a lot about design, and I learned a lot about simple is hard. It's refine, 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 refine. And, even in getting the patent, that you're going to get the US patent based on something very specific and very technical. Like, I had to go up against patents that were created in 1934. And I still had to defend against it. So it's in, and I think I started it with my sister, but eventually I kind of took it on, but it was something that I could have abandoned. And I think it's character building. You started it, you have a great idea, do it. You're going to always have your name. Huh?
Bold again.
Bold again. Bold again, meaning you have an idea, pull the thread through. You can actually do it. It doesn't seem large anymore. And I do have other ideas, but to your point, there's so much I want to do. I wish I had like 3 of me. I could be like, you do
Clone
this.
yourself. We've got to get
Exactly.
start cloning.
But I can only pick me. So I have to really, to your point, when I really want to, at this age and this phase of my career, that I really do want to contribute and make an impact to really helping people who are really great get out of their own way.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
It's always great speaking with you, Sandi.
Yes, it's always fun just talking to you, understanding where you're going, what you've done. And I hope everyone who listened to this podcast today take away a spirit of being bold. Go out and give us the information about your book where your readers could get that.
Well, of course, they can get it on Amazon, and it's bold. And it's, by the way, the subtitle is Rein, R-E-I-N, in your mind, Rein, R-E-I-G-N, in your career.
Please go out and look for that on Amazon, and make sure Audrey Lloyd gets, her point across to you. It's
Audrey D. Lloyd, but D. Lloyd too.
Audrey D.
There's
Lloyd.
another Audrey Lloyd also as an author.
So Audrey D. Lloyd.
Yes, please.
So thank you, Audrey. Thank you for coming on, and I appreciate it. And I can't wait to have you on again when your next bolder thing comes out, whatever that may be.
Yes, the next bold move I would love to talk to you about.
Everybody, we've been talking to Audrey D. Lloyd today, and go out and get her book, Bold. This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on The First, where no 2 stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.